So we're looking at overcoming fear of death and preparing for death and understanding what happens when we die. So that's a big question. Most people don't like to think about death, but then they're shocked when someone dies or gets a fatal illness or they get a fatal illness. So it's much better to actually prepare for death, as the Buddhists always say, to prepare for death while we're young and healthy, so that we don't, we're ready for when our death comes. So Venerable Geshe Kelsang says in a section, "What does our death mean?" Our death is the permanent separation of our body and our mind. We may experience many temporary separations of our body and mind, but these are not our death. Okay, so that's important. At night during dreams, our body remains in the bed, but our mind goes to the various places of the dream world and then returns to our body. So these are temporary separations that we all know about. Okay. At death, our mind separates from our body permanently. Our body remains at the place of this life, when of course it's useless, it's no longer functioning, which is why we died. But our mind goes to various places of our future lives. And he gives us a beautiful analogy, like a bird leaving one nest and flying to another nest. This clearly shows the existence of our countless future lives and that the nature and function of our body and mind are very different. Our body is a visual form that possesses color and shape. So he's differentiating our body from our mind. But our mind is a formless continuum that always lacks shape and color. The nature of our mind is empty like space, and its function is to perceive and understand objects. So this is important because it's important to understand that our mind is not our brain. That's very popular to believe in the West, that our mind is our brain, that they're the same. And so when we die, that's it. Okay. But that's actually not the case, because our mind is going forward in a chain of cause and effect, where the cause becomes the effect, and that effect becomes the next cause, and that becomes the next effect. And so our mind is going forward. And we know that if we just think of what we can remember, that our mind is constantly changing, and it's constantly changing with momentary impermanence, where the cause goes out of existence when the effect comes into existence, and then that effect becomes the cause that goes out of existence, and then the next effect comes into existence. So it doesn't stop just because our body stopped functioning, which we call death. We have 3 levels of mind, and this is very important to understand. We have our waking mind, which we're using right now, and it's appearing our waking life. We also have our subtle mind, which will appear when we fall asleep tonight, and that appears our dreams. And then we have a very subtle mind, or our continuously residing mind, which appears during the night when there are no dreams, but we have no awareness of it. So the mind that's going from life to life to life is our continuously residing mind. It's our very subtle mind. And the only thing it's taking with it is our karmic potentialities. Okay, so that's very important. That's the only thing we take with us from life to life to life. Everything else, this world disappears, our body disappears, our friends, families, all of our experiences, all of our possessions, they all disappear permanently when we die. But our mind then goes forward. And so it goes forward. It's very important to understand what happens at the point of death so that we can prepare for it. And if we prepare for death while we're actually living, then when the time of our death comes, we're going to be able to keep our mind peaceful and happy, which makes for a wonderful death, and it makes for a wonderful rebirth, because the law of karma comes into play when we're dying, as it does in every other circumstances. So Venerable Geshe Kelsang says in this section on what is karma, the karmic seeds that ripen when we die are very important because they determine what kind of rebirth we will take in our next life. What particular seed ripens at death depends upon the state of mind in which we die. That's why it's so important to come to terms with death. I mean, we all know that death is certain, even though we don't like to think about it. We intellectually know that. Somehow we think we're going to be a special exception, you know, but nobody's ever been a special exception to death, you know. Even the most powerful people in the world who have the largest amount of possessions and so forth and so on, they all die. Just read history, and you know that. Alexander the Great died, for example. He had a huge empire. I mean, and so our current people who have huge amounts of money, like trillions of dollars, will also eventually die. No one is going to escape death. And most importantly, because we're really talking about ourselves, none of us here are going to escape dying. But we also don't know when the time of our death is. That's karmically determined, but we don't know when it's going to happen. And so it's very useful to train ourselves to think, I may die today, because we just don't know. I may not die today. And, you know, thus far, I haven't died, but who knows, you know. I could have a heart attack right now, giving this teaching and collapse, and that'd be the end of it. I'll try not to, by the way. But actually, I know someone who was giving a teaching who did have a heart attack in the middle of that teaching and did die in the midst of it. And, you know, this is at a major conference. So you just never know, you know, you never know. I had relatives, you know, extended family relatives who were driving home after having a Christmas Eve dinner with family, and a drunk driver crossed the road, smashed into him, and killed everyone in the car, you know, both parents and two of the three children. The third child was in college and so had not created the causes to die at that time. But the rest of the family was wiped out on Christmas Eve. You just never know, you know. Because we don't know what's lurking in our own bodies. You know, we could have an aneurysm that pops, and that would be it. That happened actually to one of our practitioners here who was in really good physical health. He was in his late 40s, and he had actually bought our old center and was turning it into an Airbnb and was living in the room that I lived in for many years. And he just didn't show up one Sunday for his volunteer activities. And we just thought, oh, he's traveling, and he forgot to tell us. But then we got a call on Tuesday that he was found dead in his room, you know, sitting in his chair. And he'd had an aneurysm. So we never know when the time of our death is going to be. So we need to prepare now for death. So that's why it's really important to think, I may die today. And since I may die today, then I need to make today spiritually meaningful. I need to prepare myself by learning to keep my mind beneficial and to oppose all my delusions and make each day spiritually meaningful. Because, that's the whole Buddhist spiritual path, is to recognize and reduce all of our unhappy states of mind, which cause us to harm, and to recognize and increase all of our happy states of mind that lead us to higher and higher realizations, like cherishing others and great compassion and the wish to become enlightened and so forth. So we have this wonderful opportunity, because we're here hearing these teachings, to actually make today meaningful and really think, I may die today. I may not die today, but if I do die today, what do I want today to look like? What would I have wanted to accomplish on this day? So it's a wonderful mind to develop, because it really helps us to sustain our effort in our spiritual practice. And then